Okay, today's lesson is about the law of sines and cosines. Alrighty, the law of sines is A over the sine of capital A, little b over the sine of capital B, and little c over the sine of capital C. Those letters come from labeling a triangle. If you recall, when you label a triangle, the angles are capital letters and the sides are lowercase and they're opposite where the angle is. And that's important. It doesn't matter where you put A, B, C, but once you have A here, little a has to be opposite it, okay? So this is the side over the sine of the angle, side over the sine of the angle, side over the sine of the angle. You're going to use this law when you're given angle, angle, side, or angle, side, angle. You got to think back to geometry. The angle, angle, side is angle, angle, side. Angle, side, angle is angle, side, angle. They go in a row. You're working your way around the circle. Also, SSA, which is the ambiguous case, which is the next lesson. And how do you remember it's the ambiguous case? It's because if you spell it backwards, it's a word you shouldn't say out loud. Okay, so keep that in mind. Alrighty, so the goal is, usually we say solve the triangle. Solve the triangle. That means find all sides and all angles. So what I like to do is give myself a chart over here. I have the triangle PQR. And I put all my angles here. P is 48, Q is 22. And then there are sides that are opposite them. And they told me P is 5. And then I just need to fill in the chart. I also draw triangles, because without a triangle, I don't know what I'm doing. That's a bad triangle. Hang on. I got 48 and a 22. Okay, so this is 22 degrees, so that's Q. This is 48 degrees, so that's P. Opposite of P is that. So this must be R. That's little r, and this is little q. Now, a lot of people like to label the triangle and not make this chart. The problem is I have a hard time finding your answers. So just make me a chart. It makes life easier. All right. So you want a side and an angle that are together. So you have 5 over the sine of 48. And then pick one. Well, we know q, right? So we need to find little q over the sine of 22. When you cross multiply, you end up with q is equal to 5 times the sine of 22 over the sine of 48. The good news is you get to put it in your calculator. Make sure your calculator's on degrees. Okay, because these are all degrees that they gave you. And you punch the buttons and put it in your calculator. And I ended up with 2.52. Then I have to go back and find R. Well, find the angle R. What are the sum of the angles in a triangle? Sum of angles equals 180. You should remember that. So all I have to do is 180 minus 48 minus 22, and I get 110 for R. Now set this up again. When I go back and set it up the second time, I use the data they gave me to begin with, because you have less rounding error. Okay, I could have used this, but you have rounding error, so I go back to the beginning. And so now I have R is equal to 5 times the sine of 110 divided by the sine of 48. When you do the math, you end up with 6.32. And I've now solved the triangle, which means I found all the sides and all the angles. All right, so let's set up another one. And it doesn't really matter how you draw it. This looks like it's about 75, so that's Z. This is 40, so that's Y. And they gave me X, so this is X, so this is 4. And then I come over here and make my X, Y, Z. And X we don't know. Y is 40, Z is 75. And then you have little x, little y, little z. for the sides, and they told us that was 4. Well, currently, there's no law of sines I can set up because I don't have an angle and a side combined. But I can use 180 minus 40 minus 75 and get the fact that x is 65. And now I can use my law of sines, and you have 4 over the sine of 65 equals y over the sine of 40. You do the math, and you end up with 2.87. I can set it up again. 4 over 6 sine of 65 equals z over the sine of 75. You'll notice I went back to the ones that were no rounding involved. You get a more accurate answer, 4.26. And when you give me your answers, I have a little leeway out here because it depends on when you round. But that's what all there is to the law of sines. It's fun, it's easy, all right? The law of cosines is a little more complicated. It's when you're given two sides and an angle. It means the angle has to be in between them. You're given side, angle, side, or side, side, side. And it's a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cosine of a. Now, I put parentheses around this because we use our bad algebra, and people like to subtract b squared plus c squared minus 2bc, and then they multiply that whole thing times the cosine of a, and you get the wrong answer every time, okay? If you solve this for the cosine of a, you end up with b squared plus c squared minus a squared over 2bc. And that's when all three sides are given. I just always use this one. All right, and the other thing to keep in mind is that I could have done this. B squared equals a squared plus c squared minus 2ac cosine of b. This and this match, a and a. Or I could have done c squared equals b squared plus a squared minus 2ab cosine c. And the other thing to remember is to use the cosine. All right, so I'm going to set this up. First, I'm going to draw my triangle. This is 56 degrees. This is C, so this is little c. This one looks longer, so I'll make that D. And this is 10, so that's B. And I'm given side, angle, side. I can't, there's no way for me to set up my law of sines because I don't have anything that matches. All right, B, C, D. D is 11, B is 10. So there's no side and angle that go together. So since they gave me C, I'm going to start with C squareds over here. You take B squared plus D squared minus 2 times 10 times 11 times the cosine, don't forget use the cosine button, of 56. And remember, put this in parentheses. All right, I did the math, and I ended up with c squared is equal to 97.98. The other common mistake is you forget to take the square root. So you end up with c is equal to 9.9. You got to take the square root. All right. So once I have c is 9.9, I can go back and use the law of sines. I have 9.9 over the sine of 56 equals 10 over the sine of b. So I have the sine of b equals 10 times the sine of 56 divided by 9.9. You're going to get an answer in your calculator, and then you're going to use the inverse sign. Okay, so inverse sine of 10 times the sine of 56 over 9.9. And I ended up with b is equal to 56.88. Once you have that, you can subtract them from 180, and you get 67.12. And you're done. Your triangle solved. Let's do it again. I'll give you a hint. I worked this the first time and I couldn't get an answer. So I found out that I wasn't using the cosine. I was using sine. All right, so what'd they tell me? Well, this is 30. This one looks shorter. This is 25. So this is n. Opposite 30 is r. Opposite 15 is m. So I just picked one. I did it this way. 15 squared equals 25 squared plus 30 squared. It's the other two sides. Minus 2 times 25 times 30 times the cosine of m. First time I did it with sine and it didn't work. So you end up with 15 squared minus 25 squared plus 30 squared. Minus 30 squared, sorry. I do it opposite of that thing. And you divide by negative 2 times 25 times 30. The formula I gave you before, it had a negative out of it. And that equals the cosine of m. And then you do the inverse of it. Okay? And when I did all that using the cosine button instead of the sine button, I ended up with m is equal to 29.93. I need to find n. I need to find r. I know m is equal to 15. N is equal to 25. And r is equal to 30. Now I can use the law of sines, and I have 15 over the sine of 29.93 equals 25 over the sine of n. Okay? Or you do the inverse sine of n is 25 times the sine of 29.93 divided by 15. And I ended up with n was 56.25. You subtract them both from 180 and you get 93.82. I know that was fast, but you can always pause it, get out your calculator, and check it. Okay? All right, last thing. To find the area of a triangle using the sine is 1/2 AB sine C. Two sides and an angle. Or it's 1/2 BC. Let me put an or in there. Sorry, hang on. Time out. Or 1/2 BC sine A. Or 1/2, let's see, AB AC sine B. Two sides and an included angle. All right? So here we gave us some triangles, and you have to decide if you use law of sines or law of cosines, and then find the area. Don't forget to find the area. All right? So here's my triangle. That looks like 60 degrees, so I'm going to call that Y. This is 50. X is 43. XY, let's make this Z. And if you come over here and you got X, Y, and Z, this is 43, Y is 60. Do I need to write down the ones they gave me? Yes, because then your triangle's complete. Well, I have a side and an angle together, so I can use the law of sines. So 50 over the sine of 60 is equal to X over the sine of 40. You do the math, and I got 39.375. These I subtract from 180 and got 77. And I did this again. 50 over the sine of 60 equals Z over the sine of 75. Nope, 77, sorry. And I got 56.25. Now they wanted me to find the area. Well, it doesn't matter if you just have to use two sides and an angle. So let's do this side, and this angle. 1/2 times 39.375 times 50 times the sine of 77. And I got 959.14. Okay? But I could have done 1/2 times 50 times 56.25 times the sine of 43. Okay? I use this one, and this one. Two sides and an included angle, two sides and included angle, two sides included angle. All right? Let's do one more. Okay. Angle 71, all right. So this is 71, that's D. This is 21, it's longer, so this is E. This is 15, so that's C. And this is little d. I have side angle side. I've got to use the law of cosines. Because I don't have a side opposite an angle. And since I've got d, I'm going to look for little d. And you get 15 squared plus 21 squared minus parentheses 2 times 15 times 21 times the cosine of 71. And I ended up with d squared equals 460.89. Don't forget to take the square root. So it's 21.47. So this is 21.47. I now have enough to use the law of sines. So 21.47 divided by the sine of 71 equals 21 over the sine of E. So inverse sine of 21 times the sine of 71 divided by 21.47 gives me angle E, which is 61.74. And I subtract those from 180 and got 47.26. That was fast, wasn't it? But I didn't take time out to hold my calculator. You can hit pause. And then I need area. So I'm going to find the area using the ones they gave me. Those are my, I've got side and an included angle. So it's 1/2 times 15 times 21 times the sine of 71. And I got area equals 148.92. And that's all there is to the law of sines and cosines. Come back next class and we'll do the ambiguous case.